Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Bethlehem City Zoning Hearing Board. My name is Terry Novotnik and I'll be the chairman for tonight's meeting. Other members of the board for tonight's meeting is Mary Frances Stone, who is an alternate member, but she will be a full voting member tonight. William Fitzpatrick, Leah Grisby, Jessica Lee. The solicitor for tonight's meeting will be Eric Schock. Our court stenographer is Jean Genova, and Paige Stefanelli, the city zoning officer, will serve as secretary. Before we begin the proceedings, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Mr. Fitzpatrick. Mr. Fitzpatrick has been a member of the board for, I believe, some 15 years.
Yes.
And 6 of those he served as chairman. I succeeded him, which was a difficult task.
We had to go with a younger man. Too, so.
This will be Bill's last meeting, and Bill is a lifelong resident of Bethlehem, other than when he was traveling the world with the United States figure skating team. And I think his 15 years of service shows that he is dedicated to our city, the city that he grew up in. So I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, everyone.
There are copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting on the table to my left. There's also sign-in sheets if you care to sign in. There are 5 hearings on the agenda. Would the parties to the first hearing please come to the applicant table, which is 1323 to 1329 Spring Street.
Is that showing?
I just texted.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not obligated. Yeah. Okay. This one. Yeah, just explain that. Yeah, we've never had this one before. Right? Read through it and just explain it.
As I said, there are 5 hearings for tonight's agenda, and anyone who plans to testify for any of those hearings, would you mind standing up and please be sworn in by our stenographer?
That would be us, right?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Raise your right hands, please. Do swear by mighty God, searcher of all hearts, that the testimony that you shall give in this proceeding should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And as you shall answer to God at the last great day, do you so swear?
I swear.
I swear.
May be seated.
Could you tell me when the property was posted with the placard you would have gotten from the zoning officer?
I think it was like the 18th.
Okay, thank you. Paige, could you please read the particulars of the case?
Okay. Subject property is 1323 to 1329 Spring Street / 282 13th Ave. This is the legal address after discussing the issue with the engineering department. So I just wanted to clarify this issue because it was one when we were looking up everything.
The house number is different, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah. So they did have a prior address and it was actually legally changed. So that's why we have to legally list all of the property addresses as it was. This is the appeal of Teresa Labardi and Laura Schultz to construct a 1-story addition to an existing single-family dwelling in excess of 5% of the current building footprint, which requires a special exception. The record lot is 110 feet by 130 feet, which is 14,300 square feet. This is located in the RS zoning district, which is single-family residential zoning. Just to clarify for the zoning hearing board why they're coming in front of the zoning hearing tonight is because the property itself, the way the home was constructed, the home is currently legally non-conforming. So nothing about the home is conforming to the current ordinance. So we had to reference the non-conformities section of the zoning ordinance, which is hence why they need the special approval because what they are proposing right now is in excess of the 5%, which is a permitted expansion by right underneath the nonconformities.
Okay, please proceed.
Wait, could you give me your name, please?
Teresa Lombardi.
Thank you.
Basically, we want to add an addition to the house, a bedroom, bathroom, because my in-law has moved in and we need the extra space for her. And that's pretty much it, cut and dry.
So it was mentioned that it's more than 5%. Do you know the percentage?
It was on the paperwork that we handed in. I don't have any of that.
Well, why don't we make it, I'll tell you what, we'll make your application exhibit A1 will be what you submitted. And then we'll do this. I couldn't find the number when I was looking.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the notes here.
Francis, show me peek at yours and rather than keep spreading these out. Peek at yours.
Yeah, just give us required for proposed. Yeah, and the architect
Doesn't say
isn't
anywhere.
here. I know it is
Okay.
because you have a 14 by 30, which is, I mean, I could figure it out.
All right. So let's do this. The plan shows that you want to put on 14 by 30.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be to me 420 square foot addition. Okay. And the existing dwelling is we're
I need my scale.
yeah. I'm gonna say it's probably 34 by about 50. So let's call it 1,500 square feet roughly. So 420 of 1,500 would be probably a 30% addition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll get the right number for you for
Okay.
the decision. I'll go on the county website to see what they have
Okay.
on there.
We'll just say an addition in excess of 5% as shown on the plan. Okay. Do you know how old the house is?
54, I think.
1954.
I
Okay.
believe it was 54.
Do you know if there's ever been any additions to the home before?
No,
No additions. And what's the reason why you indicated yet you have someone moving in with you?
yeah. Her mother, they lost the father and husband in January, and she was diagnosed with dementia. So they didn't want her to obviously live alone, and she doesn't want to put her in a home. So we want to bring her in.
Okay.
Well, we did bring her in. We're just kind of crunched.
And will this be a separate unit or will it just become essentially
It's just
part of the
attached.
home?
Basically, I have a room, a small room.
Hmm.
We want to knock the wall, put a doorway to go right into that area.
Okay.
So
Yeah. And the point of my asking that question is, for example, if the person who's going to reside there moved out at some point, it's not as if it's a separate unit that you could try to rent out or anything.
No.
It's part of your home.
yeah, it's no,
Okay.
definitely not.
And they did provide a floor plan that shows the egress and ingress,
Mhm.
that it goes through the home and it's not a separate entrance.
Yeah, we don't even have an exterior door because, like I said, she has
Okay.
dementia. We don't want her to be able to get out another way without our knowledge.
And if you put this addition on, is is it going to be out of character with the neighborhood at all, or is it just going to look like you made your home a little larger and it's going to look like all the other ones, but be a little bigger than it
It's
was?
just gonna be an L.
Okay. You can't think of any change it would cause to the neighborhood. In other words, it's still going to look like the same neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I mean, the siding, I mean, like, we're not doing purple and pinks and greens to
Yeah.
contrast the house. Same beige siding. Literally gonna just look like the house kind of grew a little.
Okay. And if I'm correct, your neighborhood is partly residential, but you're very close to a large institution too, correct?
Holy Families
Holy,
across the street.
right. So there's a gigantic building just a block away from you.
Well, yeah, and then there's like a whole bunch of townhouses behind us and on 13th Avenue up the block.
And just to add, Eric, along that whole roadway on Spring Street, all of the homes, their houses they would even be making it probably like more in character.
Closer, yeah.
Because a lot of the houses along that whole roadway are actually closer to the road itself, closer to the right of way. But for some reason, the way their house was built, it's really far back on the property.
I mean, it's a corner lot, which is why right?
Correct.
Am I correct? You're a corner lot,
Yes.
and the way it's set.
I think what we've been told is that the people that made the house
Mhm.
own the entire block at one time and put it in the center of their street, which is why it's so far from the curb, and like
Yeah.
delivery people miss us all the time and deliver to next door. It's crazy. So maybe with the house coming out a little, it might go, oh, there's a house here.
And I presume there's no way to accommodate an expansion that wouldn't need this relief.
Correct. Yeah. And the total percentage is going to be 18 to 20% increase.
Okay. 20%.
Yeah, the
Okay.
only way we could build is forward. We have the park behind us, our neighbor in the street.
And to your knowledge, in your discussions with the zoning officer, things like coverage, all of the other requirements are met, or are those non-conforming?
No, they are actually met.
Okay.
Yep.
All
So
right.
they do meet the setbacks otherwise. It's just the fact that they're adding on to a structure that's already pre-existing and that's not conforming. But they do meet the setbacks for side yards and front yards and rear yards otherwise.
All right, because that seems to be the only specific criteria, is that you meet the setback when
Correct.
you do this.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions I had. If the board wanted to ask some questions, I just want to try to get some of the facts out.
Yes, thank you. Members of the board, questions? Mary Frances?
I don't have any at this time.
Bill?
Thank you.
I have no questions.
Leah?
I have no questions.
Jessica?
No questions.
Either of you two have any additional comments or questions?
I do not have any questions.
Do you have any other witnesses?
Comments?
Just us.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
very good. Does anybody in the audience wish to question these two witnesses? Seeing none, does anybody in the audience have any comments to offer regarding the request? Seeing none, thank you. Do you have any final words you'd like to say before we go for deliberation?
I hope you do it.
Excellent
Because we
closing.
need it.
Very well put.
That works.
Yeah.
Mr. Preston, take some notes.
We'll go off the record.
Okay.
Okay, we're back on the record. Can I have a motion from a member of the board, please?
I make a motion to approve the construction of the one-story addition at 1323, 1329 Spring Street with one condition, and that is that the addition be constructed as shown on the plan.
Can I have a second?
I second.
Would you please call the roll, Paige?
Terry Novotnik,
Yes.
Jessica Lee,
Yes?
Leah Grigsby,
Yes.
William Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
and Mary Frances Stone.
Yes.
Your project's been approved. You may want to wait to start until you get the final written decision.
Okay.
Other than that, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good night.
You too? Okay, where are we?
Lyndon.
Moving on.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is that of 2650 Linden Street. So please come to the applicant table.
Oops.
And when was the property posted?
June 19th.
Okay, thank you. Paige, could you read the case, please?
You know what, Terry, I think for this one, I'd make an announcement just real quick. I think my firm has in the past done some work, but they're not a current client. They're Mr. Preston's client. I know nothing about this matter. I'm not a voting member. I won't vote on it, but I don't think it's a conflict, but I did want to indicate that.
Yeah, we had
they
this at a prior hearing.
Exactly. I
We
think I'm
waived
repeating
that.
what Steve said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're good.
last time. We're good.
We're good. Yep.
All right, very good. Please proceed. Paige?
Okay, this is the property of 2650 Linden Street. This is the appeal of Makeda Partners, 2650 Linden LLC, to construct a two-story multifamily structure with 8 total dwelling units, which requires a dimensional variance for minimum lot size, 4,000 square feet per unit required, 3,000 square feet per unit proposed, and a parking setback of 15 feet required, 5 feet proposed. The record lot is 120 by 200 feet, which is 24,000 square feet. This property is located in the RG zoning district, which is the medium density residential zoning district.
Attorney Preston, please
Okay.
proceed.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. My name is Jim Preston, the attorney for the applicant, and the applicant is Makeda Partners. Seated to my right is Dave Ronca, and he's going to be the first and only witness here this evening. You've been sworn, Dave?
I have.
Okay. Would you introduce yourself and explain your relationship with Makeda Partners, please?
David Ronca. I am the managing member of Makeda Partners 2650 Linden LLC.
And the property itself is zoned RG, medium density residential, is that correct?
That is correct.
And just for the record, the use that you're proposing is a permitted use?
Yes, it is.
So the reason we're here this evening is for dimensional relief, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, well, now that we have that out of the way, what is it that's being proposed? Let's talk about the project that you have in mind.
I am proposing to construct a 2-story, 8-unit apartment building on the property.
Okay, and you have an exhibit that can explain what that looks like?
I do.
Let's take a look at that.
Sure. Is the easel?
It should be actually out there. I can go try to grab it.
Get it, Paige.
You sure?
Who's that chair?
Yeah, it should be right out there in the hallway, as long as no one stole it. That happens too.
And while he's doing that, this will probably help us move along a little more quickly. I'll just explain to you that the particular project here, what you're going to see through the testimony is that there are some extenuating circumstances that have to do with prior developments adjacent to this property that were never completed, that now fall onto the back of this developer. There's that, and there's one other variance, which is the variance for a parking setback. But we'll go through that with the testimony. So Dave, if you want to, first of all, what is that? What's that called, the title block?
Mary Frances, can you?
Yeah, can you turn that just a little bit, please? Thank you.
Just push, or maybe just push it back a little bit.
Yeah, or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of things. He should get the mic, and then I think we should just ask if anyone in the audience is here for this one, because then they can move up. Okay.
Hold on. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Nice. Yeah. If you want to sit where you can see, or you're welcome to walk around and see it?
You've seen it before. All good?
So Dave, before you begin, what's the title block? We're going to mark this as A1. What would A1 be?
This is the site plan, the concept site plan for 2650 Linden.
Okay, very good. Go ahead.
Okay. All of you are familiar with Linden Street. This property is situated immediately west of the Turnberry Mews, north and west of the Turnberry Mews condominium development. I'm sorry, townhouses or what they're called, which is situated right around in this area here. The side of the front of the building is intended to face southward, with the side of it facing west on Linden. The proposed parking is to the east of the building. By the way, we do have sufficient parking. We have, I believe we've provided 16 spaces, which exceeds the minimum, if I'm not mistaken, Paige.
Yeah, I think the minimum was 14, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. Yeah,
correct.
14.
So with that said,
So we comply with all aspects of zoning other than the two items.
that
we're
is
here
correct.
for
We
this evening.
comply with all setback requirements, parking minimums.
Well, let's talk about the first item, and the item is actually, it's from 130601, and the board's very familiar with this. It's the square foot per unit requirement. So the code requires that for each unit, dwelling unit, you have 4,000 square feet.
That is correct.
I believe that would give you a yield of 6 units. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you could do 6 by right.
By right, we can do 6 units.
You're proposing 8,
I'm proposing 8.
which takes you down to a 3,000 square foot per unit density. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the delta there is 1,000 square feet per unit.
That is correct.
Very good. Now, I had mentioned earlier about some extenuating circumstances, just circumstances that apply to this particular property. First of all, tell us what's around here, the neighborhood. Is it a single family residential area? Or
Immediately around the property is multifamily. There is multifamily to the north of it, multifamily to the west, I'm sorry, to the east, and multifamily to the east and south with Turnberry. And then to the west is the Holy Savior Cemetery.
You've mentioned Turnberry a couple times. Is that a townhome development?
Yes, it is.
That's immediately adjacent.
That is correct.
Does it wrap around the property somewhere?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and that's sort of instrumental, the Turnberry property, and I guess it affects the cost of this development.
Yes, it does.
But why don't we get into that a little bit? Give us a little bit of the history there, if you would.
Okay. Can I show them the proposed
Absolutely.
building?
Yep.
Just so everyone can get an idea of what it's intended to look like. Again, as I said earlier, this would be the south-facing elevation of the building. And that would be the west-facing elevation of the building that you would see from Linden Street. So,
We're talking about Turnberry a little bit. You're going to give us a little bit of the history of Turnberry.
yes.
Go ahead.
As I know Turnberry Mews, and I've had a number of meetings with the residents, that property, I believe, was developed back in the early 2000s, and the developer ultimately, I don't know if he went bankrupt or defaulted or what the story was, but there were a lot of uncompleted items associated with Turnberry, particularly as I understand it from Turnberry. It's, as you all know, under the land development process, that what exists on this lot now is an existing single-family home. And Turnberry, when it was developed, would have had to have considered that as an existing single-family home, and therefore by ordinance was required to provide planning buffer, as well as would have had to accommodate any of the stormwater runoff from that property. As I understand it from Turnberry, some of the stormwater management measures may not have been completed by the developer, and as well, it's evident that a fair amount of the landscape buffering was not completed when that project was whenever the developer defaulted. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the city had stepped in at one time and acted on whatever security was left to complete the roads and perhaps a few, I don't know, a few other things associated with the community. But so
But
with
Dave,
that,
let me just cut to the chase here. So there, there was some unfinished business at Turnberry. Is that a fair statement?
that is correct.
And some of that involved stormwater controls.
That is correct.
Some of that involved buffering and stuff, required buffering that was never completed.
That is correct. In fact, I have the site plan for Turnberry, for the original Turnberry development. This is the parcel that we're talking in question right now, my 2650 Linden with the single family home. This is Turnberry. This is the landscape plan that was approved by the city when the development was approved, depicting all the landscape plannings and everything that were supposed to have been completed.
And as part of your proposal, you're going to complete a lot of that landscape or most of that landscaping as leases around your property. Is that correct?
That is correct. In
And
fact,
that's going to require you to make improvements to the Turnberry property. Is that correct?
that is correct.
And you've discussed those, I believe, with the city zoning office. Is that correct?
Yes, I have.
And if the zoning hearing board were to impose that as a condition that you complete those improvements, is that something that you would agree to?
Yes, as shown, as depicted on the plan that I,
Right.
Yeah.
That you submitted that, I understand. And what about stormwater? What's unique about the stormwater?
when we get into the land development stages of the project, if the stormwater measures are not in place as suspected by Turnberry, it's going to force me to have to do some, perhaps some extensive stormwater mitigation measures to accommodate my runoff, if that makes sense to anyone.
Well, no, it was a little difficult. Though. Let's
Yeah.
cut through that. So if Turnberry had completed their stormwater infrastructure as per their plan, you could connect to that very simply. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. It would have, yes,
But they didn't do that. Is that correct?
that's my understanding of it.
Right. And as a consequence, that's added to your stormwater measures that you have to take because the prior developer did not take the steps to accommodate your stormwater.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, and I see that there's people from Turnberry that are here, and if I've said anything, and here, are we good so far?
Not exactly.
Okay, okay. Anyway.
Wait a minute, what's your name?
My name's John Avolio, Avolio, 909 Greenhouse Drive.
Thank you.
Okay, and so Dave, let's talk about let's go to the final piece of this, which is the parking. There's a variance that's required not for the parking count. You
For the
meet on
setback from the building.
setback. Identify that for the board with reference to your drawing.
As I mentioned earlier, the parking is intended to be on the east side of the building. As to that 5-foot separation, which I believe the ordinance requires 15, I don't at all believe it to be an issue. Because of the topography of the property, this elevation will be approximately 5 feet lower than the first floor elevation of the building. So any any vehicle lights or anything like that would be basically shining at exactly below any windows or right, exactly.
There's essentially a berm between the lot and the building. Right?
Precisely.
Okay. That's all I have for Mr. Ronkin.
Questions from members of the board? Mary Frances?
I just have one question with the property. Are you showing the parking? How are you entering and exiting
Oh, I'm sorry.
your complex?
The access drive is on the south side of the property from Linden Street.
Okay. No other questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Actually, just one quick clarification. If the parking is on the east side, is that the side that the Turnberry?
That is correct. And I am required by ordinance. I've agreed with Turnberry to provide a 6-foot high privacy fence to shield any automobile lighting, any light pollution, if you will, from headlights. In fact, it's actually returned. I believe we're showing it 18 feet returning on the east-west heading property lines, and then the entire length of the east property line.
Thanks. I just wanted to orient my. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Leah?
So the fence will be inside the row of arborvitae. trees
That is
you're growing
correct.
On the outside. So
The
the people from
arborvitae's-
that neighborhood would see plants, not.
Well, they would see
not
the
wood
plantings.
fence.
That's correct.
Okay. And back to the 5 feet setback for the parking, is that going to be, because 5 feet is quite substantial, is that going to be walled? Or is it just going to be the hill?
What you'll have on this side is, as I said, the lot slopes from west to east. There's probably a 5 to 6 foot elevation difference. So this elevation here will be much lower, but the building foundation will be out of the ground at that.
Okay, so it's just basically going to be.
Exactly,
On
exactly.
a slant. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, do you only have one entrance and exit
Yes,
area?
yes.
Okay. Trash is?
Trash container is, in fact, unfortunately, it's not shown. It's intended to be at the bullhead of the parking lot, and that is also will have a fenced enclosure. A six,
30-foot area there, right?
that's correct. Yes, right in there.
Okay.
I have no questions. Eric?
From the parking lot then, if it being lower, where are you going to, is there a walkway then to the
Yes.
building?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the main entry is right here.
So wait, the schematic shows 2 doors.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this, unfortunately, that wasn't consistent. It will have 2 entrances. Yes.
Paige?
Just give me 1 second. I'm just writing something down.
And if I can go back and ask another question, that's
Oh, sure.
while you're doing that. So the people coming from the parking area will swing back through the driveway to get into, is there a sidewalk between the driveway?
Sidewalk is right here.
Okay, because.
So they'll drive in through here, they'll park, and they'll be able to exit their vehicles and walk
Right.
the sidewalk to the building, respective building
Okay, but
entrances.
there's no sidewalk in that 5 feet. In other words, that's not I'm getting back to how the people are going to.
In this
egress into
area
the
here,
building
yes, there will be sidewalk along that side of the building.
On the slope?
No, the slope. So this will be, yeah, it's hard to,
Yeah.
because we haven't gotten into completing the full land development plans yet. It may be hard to understand. But this side of the building will be at a consistent elevation. The slope will basically be from from the east to west.
Okay. I
Across
was
the
just
front of the
concerned
building.
about pedestrian safety, getting into the building.
Oh, yeah.
or
No,
going
fully
through the
understood.
driveway, And
Yeah, in fact, to
especially
give
if
you,
there's a decline, it's,
to give you a better sense of what I'm talking about, the property will slope across the front. So the parking lot elevation will be somewhere around right here, if you understand what I'm saying,
Mhm.
if that makes more
Yeah.
sense.
And actually, while you have that up, if I could, Mr. Chairman, one final. Does this represent generally the, what the building will look like?
Yes, it does, very much so.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to ask that that be marked as A2 because we didn't do that yet for the record.
Yeah, and then if you could make E3 the Muse plant,
Yes, yes.
'cause I think that's the third one you showed.
Okay.
Paige?
Still writing.
Sorry, you guys keep talking, so I keep writing things down. Okay, the only question I had for you, David, was in terms of the slopes. I know that we didn't discuss anything before, but would you say at most it's less than 15%?
Yes, yes, without question, it'll be
Okay.
less than 15%.
And then is it true that a representative, Wallace Eldridge, emailed me while also copying you on June 13th, 2023, indicating their approval of such plantings on their private property?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I have an exhibit here. I'm going to label this as C1. This is a printout of the email that I received from Wallace Eldridge on behalf of Turnberry Muse, which essentially states that, they are they're in approval and they have no issues with the buffer plantings and everything else that is located on their property that is shown on Mr. Ronco's site plan for this.
Well, one second.
Okay, just hold on one second.
Yeah, one
I've got a
second.
chance. Okay, that brings up a point then. Can we clarify? Is that the only property that this plan depicts his proposing to plant on?
That is correct.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna pass out the email, which is directly from Turnberry Muse.
all right, so C1
Yep.
is email.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. That should be enough, right? Is that enough for everybody?
I don't know.
Good. Good.
One.
Okay. Let's see. 1.
Oh, sorry. Just free.
You're welcome. All right, I have a couple other copies here. Does anybody else want this email?
Let me just say.
Did you need to see it, sir?
Okay, so I'm just gonna read through this quickly here. Says, Dear Ms. Stefanelli, the Turnberry Muse Condominium Association Incorporate Board of Directors approves the installation of the shrubbery landscaping on the common areas of our condominium as shown on the concept plan DBV 2022-1 PG 21331. Only if the city approves the proposed project of Mr. Ronca to build a 2-story, 6 or 8 unit apartment on the lot at 2650 Linden Street. The board's approval of this placement of the shrubbery on Turnberry Muse property does not carry with it, and it is not intended to be interpreted as an approval of the proposal to build the apartment building. Thank you for your attention. Sincerely, Turnberry Muse Condominium Association Incorporated by Wallace Eldridge, President. And that's all I had because someone submitted it to me directly, so that's why I'm providing it to the board.
Thank you. All right, now, questions from members of the audience for this witness. And your questions should be based on his testimony. There'll be an opportunity to make additional comments afterwards. But at this point, we're only going to ask questions. If you go to the podium,
And you'll have to give us your name and address, please, then. So if everybody can do that. I think you did already. I caught that.
Could you put that down so we could actually see him? Your display, yeah.
Yeah. Is the mic working over there?
sound it? I think so.
Let's hear.
My name is David Schaub. I'm at 949 Greenhouse, which is adjacent to the property in Turnberry Muse. I represent the
Could you
Board-
spell your last name for us, please?
SCHAUB.
Got it.
I represent the board of directors for Turnberry Muse.
Okay.
Mr. Ronca has been very helpful in providing the information and all that, and I appreciate it. And as Paige read that letter or that email, the board then neither approves nor, we're remaining neutral on the party, on the deal with whether to approve it or not. The question that I have, and I need to understand, is that specifically with regard to displacement under section 1323.08, it says no non-conforming use shall be extended to displace a conforming use. You currently have a conforming use, single family home there. How do you propose to, why are you proposing
It's not.
a change? What's the hardship? What's the?
Okay, first of all, that we're not proposing to expand any non-conforming uses. That's what that section talks.
Yeah, so just to be clear, if I could, the use they're proposing is allowed, is my understanding.
That's correct.
So the use is allowed. It's the dimensional relief for the number of units and the parking that they need. So that section doesn't apply, and the variance section is the section that applies. They need a variance to have 2 extra units and a variance to park 5 feet instead of 15 feet from the building. Different than, for example, the first case
Yep.
where there was a non-conformity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. That's all the questions I have from that perspective. I'll
Got it.
comment later.
Okay,
Thank you.
Even though you've already stated it, it'd be good if you restated your
If
name.
you'd like
and-
me to restate it, John Avolio, Avolio, 909 Greenhouse Drive. The gentleman over here, he made a statement, which I'd like to just clarify. You said there's multifamily homes to the east of this proposal. Our townhomes are all single-family homes. That's not true. Okay, I'll buy that, but we're not multifamily homes. That's what you said earlier in your statement. In addition to that, you talked about stuff to the west. What about me and my other neighbors that are on the south? You didn't say anything about berms, arborvitaes, fencing, or anything like that. And also for historical content, I'm probably the senior person here in terms of living there. I've been living there since December of 2010. So for those people that don't know the history of Turnberry Mews, I actually bought the model from the government because it was foreclosed. They went out of business. They went bankrupt. All right, back in 2009 rather. In addition to that, at that time, there were two banks of homes.
Okay, right now, we're at the questioning his testimony. You'll be given
Okay.
the opportunity to make those comments.
In regards to his testimony, he was making a statement about the history of Turnberry Mews. I'm trying to clarify what he said in reference to what the truth is.
Okay, pertains to his testimony. Fine.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you. There were two units and banks of
Yeah.
units.
But it's not question. You will have a different time when you
Fair
can
enough.
clarify
I'll
it.
I'll
No
yield.
problem.
I'll come back.
Yep, good. Yep.
We're not going anywhere. We're all good.
Well, if you go to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Can I ask for a clarification, though, based upon your questions?
I didn't
So-
hear an answer from
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's why I do want to get the answer to the one question, which is you testified before multifamily dwellings, I think, north, east, and south. Is it townhomes to the east and then traditional apartments to the north and south? Or is it town? Can you just clarify exactly what you meant by that?
Yes, there is a multifamily apartment building to the north.
Okay,
To the east and south is the Turnberry
okay.
condominium townhome
HOA.
HOA.
But he still didn't answer the question about arborvitae,
Right.
fencing,
And
and any.
I was going to ask him if you could answer that question because I didn't hear that and I didn't get to write that down. So I think we've clarified the first one, which is it's townhomes east,
Yes, sir.
east and south.
East and south is town
Apartments, traditional multifamily north.
north.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So apartments north, townhomes east and south. Okay. And then can you repeat your question so we can get that answer?
He spoke about doing a berm and a wall of, a fence and arborvitae's facing the west. But he mentioned nothing about that on the south.
So I'm clear. Do you live in Turnberry
South,
and you live in the south?
right behind the garage. I face the side of your garage.
Okay. I assume you got a copy of the site plan?
No, sir.
Okay.
You know what? Why don't you come up and just point
Yeah, I was
out?
gonna say,
where
you're
you
welcome
are,
to come up here and
because
look at it
it'll
with
help
me.
us.
So you understand. So I understand when you say you're in the south, do understand that my property ends here. So when you say the garage, what you're talking about, this garage, that's not, just so you know, that's, this is Linden right here.
Linden.
Yep. That is your entrance to Turnberry. So I'm assuming, I know Mr. Shaw.
Hold on.
Gentlemen,
Only one
hold on.
person can talk at a time and we need to slow down a little.
Yeah, just so you guys know, take note, please, that the screen is not working, but we are still recording. So everyone else can only hear one person at one time.
That's the house that's existing.
That is correct.
That's supposed to be the garage that's existing.
This is not my property. This is
Where's
the
garage?
garage on my property
Yes, sir.
is not shown on this plan.
Thank
It's
you.
over here.
Okay, there's a garage over here. I live here. All right, there is an actual two-story garage on this property here that's not shown
Okay.
on this picture.
So you abut
I'm right
this
here.
property to
I am
the
right
south.
here, sir.
Got it.
Okay, so you're to the south.
Unit, the second bank of homes.
Okay,
off
okay.
Linden Street.
Okay, so you're oriented now. All right.
So are you.
so you understand that is where the building is oriented. So you're
So
basically,
I'm going to be facing the front here.
that is correct.
Right now, this is where that garage is located,
That-
and this is my back.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, and there's a big hole here because arborvitae stop, then there's just nothing.
And that's,
Okay, and so you're talking about building a berm here, putting stuff here. I see arborvitae. What about here? There was no mention.
there is an existing, and this was all discussed at the meetings we
I
had.
couldn't attend, sorry.
All right. If you'll note that there is an existing partial planter buffer along that.
And there's a big hole right here.
You got to let him finish.
Yeah.
And only one at a time, sir. Okay?
Exactly. And that was what at the torch and pitchfork meeting we had, we agreed to provide the supplemental plantings to fortify that area because I'm sorry, I don't remember this gentleman's name because I believe you live in that same bank of units
I live at the south.
and he expressed the exact same concern with the southwest corner,
Southeast.
or I'm sorry, southeast corner with providing planting buffers, supplementing that planting buffer to shield you guys from that side.
That's my question.
Okay.
I have a question.
So the answer is yes?
Yes.
It says right on the site map, there's proposed,
Very well done.
I mean, on the site map, just for clarification, that we have, it shows drawings of plants and it says, hold on, this is very tiny print. It's helpful
Proposed
if these things aren't so
vegetative?
little. Yeah, proposed vegetative screening infill existing buffer yard as required to provide full coverage. That's what's on the site plan that we have.
That's what he would agree to as a condition.
If we
the
made that
board-
a
if the
condition,
board wanted
yes.
to make it.
Well, it's,
All right.
it's on the plan, so.
Yeah.
Correct.
Believe it or not, you still have the floor.
I still have a question.
Did you give your name yet?
You
No.
probably didn't get a
Yeah,
chance.
name and address, please.
My name's Richard Raidline, and I live at 913 Greenhouse Drive.
Could you spell your last name?
Raidline. And I live right at the corner, southeast corner of his property, Ronca's property. My question is, at street level, when you come into my house and you walk straight out, you should walk out to my deck. I'm at the second story of his garage. There's more than a 5-foot elevation coming down. It's almost like 10 feet from the west end to the east end. I'm going to look at that. What are you going to do about me looking at that apartment? And I'll be overlooking the parking lot all day. The berm, or you said to us that you would put arborvitae in there. Well,
That's what,
I mean,
yes, you're, in fact,
I'm at a second story level on my first story house, if that makes any sense to you.
I know exactly what you're saying. And
What
to answer
can-
your first question as to the elevation drop, what I'm referring to are proposed finished elevations when the site is completed. But as it exists now, there is only about a 7-foot difference from Linden Street to the backside of the property, to that part of the
Okay.
property.
I disagree
It's-
with you, but
That's fine.
That's-
I fully understand. You can, we
Right.
can, but to answer your question, in fact, because of your particular concern raised that evening at the meeting with all the Turnberry residents, we decided to return the fence up along the east-west heading property line for a distance of 18 feet, because I know you raised concerns with shielding the cars, and you also raised concern with the planting buffer not extending down in front of your properties.
a 6-foot fence does me no good. I'm over.
I can't help that because you're up at a higher elevation that you can see the vehicles. That much I understand, but I don't know.
So you
what I
cannot
could-
do anything for me.
I don't know what I could possibly, other than building a 12-foot high fence, that would be the only solution to shield the cars
There is a berm halfway up
on the Turnberry
the
property.
Turnberry
Correct.
property.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know why they stopped if they didn't go.
Again, I can't answer that either. That
I'm so high. I'm going to look right into the apartment building. I'm going to look right into the parking lot. I'm going to have lights in my house all the time. I cannot, because I live in Turnberry, I cannot screen in anything. I have to leave everything
that-
open.
Again, that was the whole intent behind providing the additional planning buffer along that southeast corner of the property.
Well, that's my question. Thank you. I
And-
have more for later. And can I challenge that email from Wallace Elridge?
When you have the opportunity to speak, you can
Thank
give
you.
your take on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of the audience? All right, comment time.
Can I ask one
Well,
more
do you-
question, just
Go ahead.
for clarity, because we're talking about the height and the view sheds?
Sure.
You're not asking for relief from building heights.
No, sir.
The building would be there regardless.
Yes, the building is a two-story building. It conforms with all
Very good.
height requirements and so forth.
Okay, so if you were denied relief for the 8 units and you built a 6.
It would make no difference. It would
okay,
make
so that wouldn't
absolutely
solve
no
the
difference.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would the 6-unit building look like?
Pretty much the exact same thing.
And shortened on which?
So this guy, he has to
Yeah.
go to the podium.
Yeah.
You go to the podium.
If you built a 6-unit instead of an 8, which dimension would be shrunk?
No dimensions.
No dimension. So it's not going to be shorter on the east end or the
No.
west end, or
No, I mean, by right, I can build townhomes. I can build a number of different types of things.
but it can't take the same footprint as an 8-unit. That's by variance.
I can expand the unit size.
Okay, I understand. But I
Yeah,
thought that it still was so many square feet or per unit, he's then okay. So he could build 6 units on that footprint.
Yeah, to just explain.
That's what I want to know.
To explain the relief, it is lot area per dwelling unit. So it's not the size of the building. It's the number of units.
I could effectively increase the size of the building.
Got it. Okay.
You could.
And then to set off with the variance for the parking setback.
Correct.
All right.
Wh-
Thank you.
Which I think is only, correct me if I'm wrong, that's only adjacent to the building.
That is
It's not
correct.
on the-
It is not, yes,
It's just set back on the outside
That-
towards.
that is
development.
correct.
Okay.
All right. And now just to continue on a historical perspective of Turnberry Muse, since I'm like the senior guy that's here from the
Hold
development.
1 second. Do you want to just let him, if there's no more
That's-
questions,
Yeah,
he could start with.
with comments.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Okay.
Good.
This is now comment time.
All right.
Oh,
One second.
Hold on 1 second. The zoning officer has a question.
So I just wanted to ask David, so obviously this is in the beginning of stages of planning, but would it be your recollection and your agreement that any type of lighting that you would be putting on the property there, per our ordinance, we have strict restrictions on lighting and lighting spillage on any other residential property. Would it be true and correct that there would be no spillage beyond your property line for any lighting that is installed?
yes, Paige, and thank you for bringing that up because yes, that is correct. And that was also discussed with Turnberry. They were provided with the type of lighting that I would intend to provide, which
Okay.
is the contemporary LED downlighting, which greatly minimizes spread. It's more directional lighting, downlighting on the parking lot. So there should be very minimal
So
horizontal.
it's shielded.
That's correct. It's shielded.
Okay, and it's no
that was
greater than
provided
20
to
feet.
Turnberry. I'm sorry?
It's no greater than 20 feet in
That is
height.
correct. That is correct.
Thank you.
Is that it, Paige?
That's it.
Go ahead.
All right. So historical, there's an exhibit that you can all look at with regard to the Turnberry Muse development. So when the builder went bankrupt, there were the 2 banks of homes when you come in on the left-hand side down Greenhouse Drive. They were there, completed. On the right-hand side, there was a bank of 4, then there was a space and another bank of 4 more. At the very end of Greenhouse Drive, there were 3 more, and 2 of those units were not completed by the builder. 1 unit was occupied. To the left of that would have been another bank, I think 3 more homes, and then another 4 in another bank. Those were also in partial completion and were kind of derelict, actually, okay? And made no difference to me. I didn't care. I bought my house, moved here to Bethlehem in 2010, been happy. A developer came along I don't know when that was, but they finished the unfinished units. There's still 2 lots of property. One, which is on Linden Street, and also off of Greenhouse Drive. That's, I think, earmarked possibly for 4 more units. There's another lot behind the fence to the east of the proposed building, which is supposed to be another possibly 4 units, Dave. Is that correct? So at some point, there is a potential of our completing, if a builder comes in and meets our specifications and standards, to complete the Turnberry Mews development. And I think that's an important element for you all to understand, because I think that building in closer proximity or with more parking could actually, lower the value or even the potential of a developer wanting to complete that Turnberry Mews, those 2 lot sections. And that's something in the future that potentially is not only advantageous to me as a homeowner, but also to the city. You're going to have more people coming here to pay their taxes like I do. All right, that's my comment, and I thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to make a comment? Just go to the podium and please restate your name again and address.
Richard Rayline at 913. I'll just make this quick. I live at that southeast corner, and we got a note one day from, what's his name? Wallace, that they had met, the 3 board members met with Mr. Ronca and agreed to put a 6-foot fence on the east side and some arborvitae, and they would allow him to put his apartments up. So we all had a meeting at Turnberry News. I was the only one from the south side of that property that was there. The only one, my wife and I, Connie. And they voted whatever it was to 1 to let them put the apartments in. Nobody on the south side was there. Nobody got the vote. So that's why Wallace sent you that it's okay to put the 6-foot fence up in the arborvitae. If it was, a fair vote, the people that voted don't even live on the perimeter. They live on the other side of the street. And that's why I challenged that email that Wallace sent you. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Although, can I just clarify something? Because I want to make sure I
Doesn't
understand.
say the-
So, because it does say that it's not intended to be interpreted as an approval of the proposal to build the apartment building. So I
Correct.
thought this was supposed to be neutral. We're not making a comment on the apartment building.
Correct, but at the meeting, it was, do you want to let them have the 6 or you want to let them have the 8? And the comments were, well, if you take care of the fox, Mr. Ronca, right?
Yes, sir.
If you take care of the fox, you can have the 8. If you let the 6-foot, you can have the 8. So everybody voted for the 8, except my wife and I. Am I correct? I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm going to sit there and watch 16 cars come in there. And I'm going to have lights right in my dining room with that apartment. And 191, I shouldn't prolong this, but 191's a mess now. All these apartments going in. That's my comment. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I just want to point out, if I may, the purpose of this communication. It was anticipated, because a lot of these improvements are not going on Mr. Ronca's property, that we would need authorization from the property upon which the improvements are going to be made. That's all this
The
was.
problem was what?
The approval from the property owner upon which these improvements were to be made. And that's all this was intended. This is so that if the board, again, I don't want to be presumptuous, if the board were to grant the approval and condition it upon the off-site improvements, that's shrubbery, this would be a necessary component, I believe, the permission of the adjacent owner. That's all that this was intended to show.
And just to add on behalf of the city, it is us that actually requested and required written approval from Turnberry Mews in order to even move forward with this plan at all. If they did not provide us the written confirmation that they are okay specifically with the buffer yard only being placed on their property, then of course there would be a great issue with the site plan. So the city did request that of the applicant. And I contacted Turnberry Mews myself because obviously at that point, from a legal perspective, I needed something in writing from the actual owner or representative of that other property. I can't have anything from Ronca essentially saying, yeah, they're okay with it, because legally that won't fly. And just to note, this email specifically has nothing to do with the approval, the 6 units or 8 units. It's literally just for the buffer yard that's going to be planted outside of Mr. Ronca's property. As for the units and how many, they can have, obviously that is the jurisdiction of the zoning hearing board.
Thank you.
Once again, I'm David Schaub. Now, again, from a board, that everything that Paige said is correct, and Mr. Ronca said, we agree that if you're going to build something there, we definitely want some type of greenery, some shrubbery, some fencing, et cetera, to wrap around the property a little bit to help with the privacy. From an individual perspective, however, I am also concerned about runoff, and we've talked about that just briefly. If I can go to the board here. Yeah, the overall
Site plan?
site plan. Yeah, so I'm all the way in this corner here. This building is non-existent as they talked about. There's a drainage right here that was supposed to be connected down to this drain here. You can see it in the plan. We do not know if this was ever connected. If it has not been, this is going to be a huge concern for us, because already this area floods back in here. If he develops all of this, and I know you have to mitigate that, but we want it done, and we want it done properly. This was supposed to have been done and been overseen by the zoning committee years ago, and it was not. That's my biggest concern as a owner. Okay?
Mhm.
All right.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience wish to offer comment? Seeing none? Do we have anything for closing?
I just have one other thing. Jim, you have anything? I just wanted to make
Trying to
one.
remember what that lady said.
Yeah,
Okay, because I just wanted to follow up on one of the
I think it was
comments
along the lines of, please approve this.
that Paige made as to the Paige, you made a comment as to the agreement by Turnberry as to the planning buffers, but just so everyone is clear, it is correct that regardless of the 6 or 8 units by zoning ordinance, I am only required to provide the fence. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
After discussion.
Just so that's clear to everyone.
Yeah, after discussion with my department, based on our interpretation of the ordinance, it would be clear that yes, only a fence or a buffer.
And no other off-site improvements or improvements on Turnberry's property. I'm doing that in cooperation with Turnberry.
That's correct.
That-
Yes.
so
The
just so
zoning
everyone
ordinance
understands that.
provides an option of 3 different
That's correct,
scenarios,
yes.
and you can essentially have the option of choosing one of those scenarios.
Yes.
One of
Okay.
them is a fence.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Oh, no, just that obviously there was a prior plan. The prior plan, the Turnberry plan, was not completed. I think we have that both from the applicant and from the Turnberry people. That's pretty obvious that happened. This plan, through cooperation with the city, will address some of that, not all of that. There's a cost of doing that. And so we're trying to get from the 6 units to the 8 units to allow us to do a project that's both benefits Mr. Ronca and the neighbors. That's it. Thank you.
All right, we'll go off the record and deliberate.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back on the record.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion?
I do, and in this case, I would like to provide two separate motions. The first will be to move to grant the appeal for the 8 units as requested. However, with the following conditions: one, that the construction of the building and the units be essentially in keeping with what was presented tonight. Secondly, that the cooperation with Turnberry Muse be a condition for moving forward. Attorney Schock?
So all of that buffering, I think they testified to,
The buff-
infill, fence, buffering, et cetera.
That's correct,
Okay.
and that's my motion. I so move.
Okay, so someone needs to second
Second.
that motion, and we'll
I'll
vote on
second.
that one. So we have a second.
Paige, would you call the roll, please?
Yep, give me 1 second. Terry Novotnik,
No.
Jessica Lee,
Yes.
Leah Grigsby,
Yes.
William Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Mary Frances Stone.
Yes.
Okay, so that one passes 4-1. Now, are you going to make a
And then
motion?
secondarily,
item.
the second motion that I'd like to make is with regard to the relief on the parking, that we grant the relief requested, subject to the same conditions as the previous motion, but also I believe in the testimony there was discussion of the construction of a sidewalk to create a bit of a buffer between the parking and the unit itself. And I so move.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Paige?
Terry Novotnik,
Yes.
Jessica Lee,
Yes.
Leah Grigsby,
No.
William Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Mary Frances Stone.
Yes.
Okay, so both of them passed 4-1 with different
Yes.
people voting no on each.
My only clarification question on the second motion is when you say some type of buffer in between the parking and the building, like where the berm
That-
is.
It's
The-
a sidewalk.
The sidewalk would
installed
be,
to create
Sidewalk.
I tried to use
separation.
those terms interchangeably, Paige.
Okay, in the form of,
Sidewalk,
Sidewalk,
so you want a sidewalk along the parking?
yes.
that's
Okay.
correct. I believe it was
I just want to
actually-
make sure that I fully understand, so that way when we go through,
It
the-
is, and
the
I
plan
believe that was
construction.
something we brought out in testimony, if I'm not correct.
So your
But that is my intention, yes.
thank you.
And just so people, there's a requirement in the city for the width of a sidewalk, correct?
It's 5 feet.
5 feet. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Terry.
Okay to take a
Yeah,
5-minute break.
we're going to take a 5-minute break before we start the next hearing.
Sorry, guys. Everyone's in a hurry over there. Where are we?
I had Bill and Jess both make the motion and a second for each
Right.
one.
And then Terry voted no to the first one, and Leah voted no to the second one.
Okay. All right, we are now back in session. The third hearing is that of 9:10 to 9:30 Fire Lane. Can you tell me when the property was posted?
6:20.
Okay, thank you. Paige, would you please read the case?
This is the property of 910 and 930 Fire Lane. This is the appeal of Robert Justin Horacek. Horatek. I couldn't say it right before, and I probably never will. On behalf of HH Saucon Square LLC, to add an additional 5 residential units to an existing 28-unit apartment complex, which consists of 2 buildings, which requires a special exception. The record lot is 4.28 acres, which is 186,436.8 square feet. The property is located in the RR zoning district, which is restricted residential zoning. And just to make note to the zoning hearing, this is essentially the same situation as the earlier case for Spring Street, where they are doing a expansion in excess of 5%. So that is the reason for why they would need the relief.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Attorney Donchez, please proceed.
Thank you. Robert Donchez from Florio Perucci, Steinhardt, Capelli, Tipton, and Taylor, representing the applicant. And I have with me here Justin today. Justin, if you could first state your full name for the record and also your relationship to the applicant, which is HH Square Saucon LLC.
Sure. It's Robert Justin Huratek, and I am the sole 100% owner of HH Saucon Square LLC.
Just for quick belt and suspenders, I'm going to mark as Exhibit A, or A1, I'll say. This is just a photo of the posting for the record. Justin, did you post the property as previously indicated?
Yes.
And you took these photos evidencing the same?
Yes.
Thank you.
Justin, I think it'd be helpful if you could just start, before we get to the specific relief that's being proposed, to just provide a little background as to the property, what exists there today, and the circumstance upon which it was approved.
Sure. So if the board is familiar with the site plan that was presented as part of the application.
Yes, this is an exhibit to the application. It's my understanding we don't need to provide another copy, but I do have copies of the application should anyone need one.
No, we're fine. We'll just make it A2 though,
That's perfect.
but we don't need extra paper. We have it.
So this property was originally approved back in 2006 as under the RG zoning at the time. The approvals were extended through the recessions. We purchased the property in 2017 with that extended approval. I think somewhere in between that time frame, the zoning had changed. So with that long extension of approvals, the original developer was tasked with issuance of a NPDS permit. There was 3 original buildings. It was originally designed to extend into within 100 foot of the creek down below, and the riparian buffer had changed. The buildings ended up being 2 buildings. So long story short, after all of these years with the extension, we had come back in with the 2 buildings as designed, as approved, and as built, which is reflected in your application, the colored rendering, and the additional pictures that show the existing buildings as they stand.
So Justin, as shown on the site plan, there's currently 2 buildings on the site, correct? This was the approved plan. And at the time, it was a permitted use under the current zoning, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then just, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it, but we did just, I'll mark this as A3, which is a 5 pages of photographs. Justin, could you just quick walk through those? I don't think you need to spend a lot of time, but just wanted to give the board, I guess, some flavor of what the development looks like, both inside and outside.
Sure. So the first page was the approved rendering of the 2 buildings. The second picture is a picture of Building A. showing the existing building as it has been constructed. Third picture is building A, the other side. And then some interior photos that show the apartment finishes and give you an idea of how they were constructed. So the quality, the finish, and again, they are now occupied in both buildings.
And when this building was constructed, there was a first floor, the lowest level that was not made into apartments, correct? And both buildings, two plural, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So
And so with that in mind, why don't you explain to the board why we are here today for the special exception and what you would like to do?
Sure. So as we touched on this a little bit, when we submitted the two building application originally, we were able to achieve walkouts and 60 parking spaces with our additional garage accessory buildings that were approved and constructed. So the extra space we had originally requested to come in under this same pretense and expand the 28 to 33, the intention of these spaces being constructed as units. And we were instructed that we could not apply for an expansion of a nonconformity until the nonconformity existed. So we had to construct and get certificate of occupancies for these buildings. So the space was then turned into multi-purpose space on the plans, but these buildings were designed.
Just for the record, I think you're going to describe the space and what you're looking to do, and we'll mark it as A4. It was attached to the application. It's the exhibits that says proposed layout for basement building A. Is that what you're referencing?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So as you can see, we did a side-by-side to show you that the plans, when submitted to the city for building permits, we revised them to show multi-purpose space in these areas. These areas are part of the existing structures. We're not asking to expand the footprints of these buildings at all. We're not asking to revise the site in any way, shape, or form. This request for these units are within the existing footprint as constructed right now.
And as these space exists now, or I guess, how do these spaces exist at the current time? They're unoccupied, correct?
They are unoccupied spaces at this time. Again, throughout this process, the architectural and mechanical engineering was all designed with the intent of these spaces. So fire sprinkler, power, all the elements of a multifamily new construction code requirement were designed with the intent of coming here at a future date to get these, to request these.
Okay. And I'll also mark the next page, which is proposed unit layout for basement building B. Why don't you, well, let me ask you first with respect to building A, is the rendering on the right substantially what you're asking approval for today?
Yes. So the only difference I would note here for reference of this exact layout that we proposed, there's two mechanical room closets that aren't depicted on here, small sprinkler closets. Other than that, the layouts are what we're proposing exactly. So.
And now again, why don't we turn to what I marked as A5, the building B proposed layout. Again, if you could just give the board a brief overview of what you're proposing there. How many units are in this building?
Building B would be 3 additional dwelling units. And again, that layout substantially depicts exactly how it is with the intent of apartments, additional dwelling units. So these were designed with these spaces in mind. And reflected on the original application, if you note the colored arrows that showed on the elevation, we showed you the windows to which these units would have on those elevations. We tried to point them out for you. These, I'll call them walkout situations.
And Justin, just for reference, I'll mark that as Exhibit A6. That is the rendering that's also attached to the application, and it has a number 2 in the bottom right. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay. Now, so I think it's important to stress, so everything that's being proposed, it's just limited to 5 units, 3 in one building, 3 in two, 100% contained within the existing structure. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there will be no increase in impervious coverage, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if permitted, the expansion of the use, the building would remain otherwise in accordance with the ordinance. Is that your understanding?
Correct. Yes.
In other words, there's enough parking on site?
Yes, we have 60 spaces. We would actually exceed the requirement by 2 additional spaces.
Okay. And if approved, would the expansion of this nonconforming use in any way alter the character of the property or the surrounding properties?
No, not at all, in my opinion, especially since this was approved under the previous zoning and it's constructed as permitted and as approved. And I would also note that this property was originally a redevelopment site. So though the zoning changed, this was a social club at one time with a little private club bar, and this was a redevelopment of that site. So this enhanced the community, much like the neighboring Mountain Park condominium site that was directly to the south of us.
Okay. And in your opinion, there'd be nothing more than a de minimis impact on any traffic to the area or anything else relating to safety, for the surrounding area?
Correct.
I mean, unless the board has specific questions, I think it's pretty straightforward. But certainly we would open it up to the board and I'd reserve any redirect.
Can I just ask one real quick?
Sure.
Yeah. So what is the expansion? Because I think you indicated the maximum is 50 before you get a variance. Are you looking at this as 5/28, or, I mean, what's the number of the expansion?
That's correct. 5 units
Okay.
over the 28. So 33 total units.
Okay. All right. So 5/28 is 17%. I don't know.
Testing my math here.
Right.
But, us lawyers are not
Be
good
like
at math.
18%, I'm guessing, somewhere in there.
5 divided by 28. Yes, 17, 0.85.
Rounds to 18. My book. All right. And I just have one other question by way of explanation. Why, when you went in with the 2 building, were you limited to 28? Is it because the old approval from early 2000 had 28 units?
That's
Even though more
absolutely correct.
buildings.
So we couldn't exercise this part of the ordinance until
Got it.
we actually constructed the nonconformity.
So each of the buildings had fewer units
Right.
on the old plan.
Because the zoning changed, we could have come into a new application, but the zoning changed. So therefore,
Gotcha. Okay, I just wanted to clarify those 2 points. Thanks, Terry.
Members of the board, Mary Frances?
So these are being furnished or reconstructed within the existing building.
correct. Yes. Existing footprints of both buildings. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
I have no questions.
Ms. Grisby?
Just a point of clarification, when I look at the schematics, I assume the 28 are on the middle and upper floors that were already approved?
That is correct.
And
Yep.
these basement, even though this is obviously on a hill, the lower level on some ends of the building is now walkout?
Correct. Building A is now a walkout. Building B is technically a walkout, but you can't walk out of your patio. So you still enter from the upper side. So
Okay, so it was your intent in developing the whole project to actually develop this lowest level as apartment buildings
Correct.
originally from the beginning?
yes.
Okay,
No questions.
thank you.
Ms. Vanelli?
The only thing I wanted to confirm was that you would be meeting all the building code requirements that are required for egress, ingress, stuff like that.
Correct. Yes.
That's it.
Questions from member of the audience? Comments from members of the audience? Seeing and hearing none, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I would just respectfully submit that it be approved. I think this is a somewhat unique scenario in that we're expanding the nonconformity, but not actually expanding the building. So the impact to any surrounding, neighborhood or anything is really non-existent in this place since the use already exists. Thank you
right.
for your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We will go off the record.